I'm fine with that. We had quite a very productive day. We got 24 clients through in just my schedule, another 10 and Tammy's, and been very productive.
That's good. So I'm glad to hear that you're staying lots of busy.
I'm glad to see that we're staying busy also. We got
Yeah.
some, as everybody these days, we got challenges to navigate,
Right.
got some basics. It's interesting, Bob, that the more challenging the times get,
Right.
the more stressed people are, the more they're squeezed financially with inflation and gas and food.
Yeah.
The more they're fear mongered, the more mastering and just doing the basics every day matters more and more and more. The basics, the basics, the basics. I had a practitioner contact me on Sunday,
Yeah.
and he goes down through this whole list of things about this gal, and she's having healing crisis and going through reprogramming, and I can't do anything but just the healing protocol and all this other stuff. And I said, well, how are her food logs? Oh, she's not even eating. Oh, okay. Well, no wonder she's saying she's not eating. He says, well, she's eating. I said, yeah, but do you know what she's eating? Because she was constipated and all this other stuff. And I don't care what the picture is. If that person is not having good bowel elimination, it's a north-south process.
Right.
Starts right here and goes that way. And if you don't just do the basics, I said, I'm telling you, I had to tell him 3 times in the conversation. I said, I promise you have her doing 1 week's worth of food logs, and it'll reveal to you what she's doing to herself to
Okay.
contribute to the problem. He didn't even do a week's worth. He just called her up and said, what do you have? Give me a breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Sunday. And actually into today. And he texted me this morning, says, yep, it was diet. So what happens is that these people, our clients, will fake
Right.
us out with all of these mystery symptoms and all this fancy stuff going on, that when we focus on the basics, the basics, the basics of good bowel movements, energy, sleep, digestion, compliance, doing their food logs, more education, being properly monitored, not once every 6 months, or even once a month. I mean, they got practitioners that they're putting people on these programs, and then, okay, I'll see you in a month. It's like, that doesn't work. That will not work. You're not going to get the results and the momentum in your business that you want if you're not going to properly monitor these cases. And if you're not going to follow a program yourself properly,
Right.
Drinking my superfood. I drank my superfood in front of one of my clients today, and he about roused. I was like, dude, you throw it in one of them shakers and put some water in there and slurp it down. It's good for you. Oh, it smells like cold food. Like, dude, for you, baby.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should get going.
All right, let's get going.
All right. Well, welcome back to New Wave Therapy. And in this episode of the Best Kept Secrets of Supplements, we're once again talking to Dan Young of Country Doctor Nutritional Center. And the product we're going to be looking at today is called HP HV Med, which is a product to control heavy metals throughout the body. So welcome, Dan. And it's great to get together once again and discuss the topics that are helpful to so many people. So Dan, I'm sure that there's many people listening and watching. They're not aware of the need to control heavy metals in the body. So I was thinking the best place to start would be, what are heavy metals and why do they need to be controlled?
The heavy metal and chemical toxicities that we carry in these bodies has been well documented for decades, literally generations now. In fact, one of the ways we identify it is through a hair analysis through Analytical Labs in Phoenix, Arizona, and it will give us markers for copper or arsenic or cadmium. We live in an environment today where we're exposed to almost 10,000 different air, water, and food pollutants. Well, these bodies, by design, can eliminate these pollutants if they're performing optimally. And what happens is the demands for toxicity exceed the body's ability to keep up. And we start accumulating at the cellular level throughout the system, even the brain, these metal and chemical toxicities. And so from time to time, we need to give the body some herbal assistance to remove these excess toxins.
Oh, I see. Okay. But why is it that conventional medical professionals they're not as concerned about the elimination of heavy metals, say, as the same way the country doctor is?
Well, when you look at the modern medical philosophy, they can't see it. They don't believe it's there. For example, if they can't biopsy a liver or a piece of kidney or a piece of mammary tissue or a lymph node, and then toxicology and pathology docs test that tissue to see what's there, then they're not looking for it. They don't think that's an issue. And so with traditional care, the type of care that's been around for 6,000 plus years of recorded history, we know from experience that the human body will give us all kinds of indicators that it's dealing with a toxic overload and it's being overwhelmed and it can't keep up with those demands. And pattern recognition is a real science. Okay. It's been around for a long, long time. And when we do system surveys with people regarding metal and chemical toxicities, there's always a pattern that develops symptom wise that physically tells us performance wise, the body's overwhelmed and just not keeping up with its internal house cleaning.
Okay. So at this point, Dan, why don't you just go through the actual product? Let us know what's in it and how it works.
Absolutely. This is HPHV Met. Okay. And this is a very simple, but yet very effective formula. There's only 2 ingredients in here: bugleweed, yellow dock, and it's in some green apple fruit juice, because the acids we found in green apples tend to activate the herbal chelation better at the cellular level. So that's why this was formulated. So it's just a very simple but effective 2 herb remedy that a person takes in a little splash of apple juice, and they can take anywhere from 1 dropper full to as much as 4 or 5 droppers full, depending upon some dosing on a daily basis over an extended period of time, 4 to 6 weeks, to calm down those toxic loads.
So I know in the past we've talked about other products that have helped. The specific product we've talked about, is there any products that work hand in hand to enhance the ability of HV Met and make it perform even better?
Yeah, anytime you can, again, when we go back to our series of cleanses, starting with the bowel, liver, kidneys, lymphatic, always make sure that we have a bowel that's performing optimally, 2 to 3 bowel movements every day, soft consistency, feels like good, complete elimination, detoxifying the bowel, detoxifying the liver. Doing these things in order is always going to make any of the next cleanses in line work much better and be more effective.
I know that's something you went over last week. That was like a roadmap, so to speak, to follow, to create a program to really, whatever you're doing, say in this case, doing a heavy metal cleanse, but it allows you to be as successful as you can. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. And what would the average person start to look for to determine that they might have a heavy metals problem?
I'm glad you asked. Just so it
I'm here
happens,
to ask.
this right here, the clinical reference guide, I
Yeah.
just want to give you some of the most common things that we see that give us a red flag that, hey, this person needs to do some additional detoxification. And this is where, again, people get faked up, because modern medicine suggests that each one of the things I'm going to share with you is a standalone concern that needs a standalone treatment, drug, specialist. Okay. Listen to this. Common experiences for people with a toxin overload. And this is so important that I didn't want to leave any of it to memory. I'm going to share it with our listeners and our viewers. Unexplained irritability, numbness and tingling in the extremities, bloated feeling, excessive itching, joint pains, frequent periods of depression, twitching of the face and eye muscles, frequent heartburn, insomnias, tachycardias, metallic taste in the mouth, cold hands and feet, difficulty remembering, people who go from constipation to diarrhea type symptoms, unexplained skin rashes, frequent urination at night. All of these things and more are indicators that the body's toxic load is too high. And this will help bring it down naturally in an effective way that they don't feel toxic from. But all of these things, modern medicine doesn't understand that these things can all be from one source. They're not standalone individual concerns that need standalone individual treatments from a variety of specialists. That all those things we've seen improve with people when they reduce that toxic load with the herbal formula.
I know you probably already covered this, but why is the elimination or even the control of heavy metals within the body so important?
You know, one of the most important things I learned clinically was listening to a lecture many years ago, and the name Dr. Ushiaka Amura came up in the conversation. And he worked at New York Hospital for well over 30 years, toxicology and pathology in the cancer areas. What he documented for 30 years before he retired and moved back to Japan, which is unfortunately the property of New York Hospital and will probably never get into the public media or in mainstream media for sure, is that he analyzed and saw that the presence of these metals and chemicals from our environment act to suppress the immune system. And there was always two markers that this doctor reportedly found in all of his toxicology and pathology reports. He found the presence of a metal or chemical suppressing the immune system, allowing a virus to thrive in every one of his cancer clients that he worked with in over 30 years of experience. That's pretty eye-opening pattern recognition backed up by more scientific data of toxicology and pathology doing samples of the tissue. He's finding these chemicals and metals at toxic levels. One more thing I would mention, Tammy Knox, the naturopath who works in our office, did her dissertation on metal and chemical toxicities, and her findings and research brought to the surface in her dissertation that there's over 300 different chemicals and toxic substances that actually pass through the umbilical cord to baby in utero during pregnancy. They've done toxicology and pathology support slicing of that tissue, and over 300 pass from mom to baby. Over 28, I believe, of those are actually considered carcinogenic, meaning that we have babies born with carcinogenic or cancer-causing materials identified by science. And this is at birth. And those studies aren't new. Some of those studies are between 8 and 15 years old. So we know that this is a problem. We know that it disrupts the normal harmony and performance of the human body. And we know from 20 years experience that very simply, some things like this right here can be a wonderful enhancement to reducing that toxic load and removing a lot of that disruption caused by metal and chemical poisoning.
Well, that makes me ask a really important question here. What are some of the most common metals that the body can absorb in toxic levels, and how could people be exposed to them in such greater amounts?
We have air, water, and food pollutants at an all-time high. Any food grocery store, if you want to find out where the majority of chemical exposure is coming in and metal, they have titanium oxide in certain food brands because it makes it light, nice and pretty white. Well, I don't know about you, but neither one of us are supposed to be eating titanium oxide in a diet because there's no nutritional value to it. And when you look at yellow dye number 40 and red dye number 5 and all of these different dyes, flavor enhancers like MSG, and anytime you look at a label on a bag, boxed, or canned product, and there's an ingredient in there that you struggle with pronouncing, you're not dealing with food. You're now dealing with the potential of a chemical and or metal toxicity and a source of those things.
Well, with what you've shared with us today, Dan, I'm sure that many people listening and watching are starting to get a basic understanding of how important eliminating heavy metals from their own body actually is. So,
Yeah, and it's rampant. The EPA at one time said that this concern was the top 3 leading cause of illness in America. The natural elimination channels of sweat, respiration, lymphatics, okay, urinary and bowel elimination can't keep up with the demands, and people get toxic over time. And these things are very easily remedied, but you're not going to hear about it from a mainstream medical practitioner. Usually, you're going to have to go into a more functional, naturopathic, herbal realm to not only hear about this discussion that we're having, but then get the proper resources to support detoxification in the body.
Dan, each week that we get together, we seem to dive deeper and deeper into and exposing problems and conditions that many people don't even know exist within themselves. And with what I'm getting back in feedback, it's really showing me that people are truly interested in what we have to share through these podcasts.
Yeah. People are more aware now than they ever have been before. The last few years has made them acutely aware of health management, health maintenance, more importantly, health restoration. And the only thing that really offers that, as I've told my clients many times, nutrition restores function, drugs mask dysfunction. And they're 2 totally different pathways. Both are considered viable. Mainstream is what it is, and that's what they use. That's the resources that they have. I just feel that ours are safer, more effective, and actually restore function than masking dysfunction. And that's the goal.
Well, that's really great to hear, And as it always happens, we start approaching the end of the week's podcast too quickly. And I'm already looking forward to our time together next week, Dan. And
Yeah, I am
you'll
too.
be sharing another very important topic next week. So, what we'll be looking for next week.
After the heavy metal detox, we're going to look into some additional support categories for the immune system. We're going to start diving into the immune system categories. And this is an exciting series that I want all of your listeners and viewers to really pay attention to, because this is going to take us into the next 5 or 6 podcasts talking about immune system support in the area of yeast, virus, parasites, staph, fungus, these types of things, environmental, how we get these things again. And we're going to have some very specific support categories of herbals that will address those needs as we go along. So I'm excited about it.
It sounds like we got a lot to cover in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
So in closing, I want to remind our viewers, both returning and new, that we upload a new podcast each Monday. And if you haven't already done so, please like, share, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. And do hit that notification bell so you'll be able to know exactly when we upload a new podcast. Those are the actions that truly make this series grow. So until next week, when Dan and I will bring you more of the best kept secrets and supplements, be safe and be healthy. That's it. Okay. And then we can just, I'm having a little problems here. I'm getting it. Okay.
Yeah, we love technology, baby.
Yeah. Okay. Stop